He was mocked in front of everyone, but when that boy with no arms sat at the piano, the entire room fell silent. And then people began to cry. How did a child who was humiliated in public turn his pain into something powerful enough to humble a millionaire? What happened the moment he played the first note? And why did every single person in that room feel their heartbreak? And what if the greatest strength a person has is born from the very thing the world calls a limitation? I'm standing there in the middle of the hall when it happens, the exact second the room shifts from celebration to something colder, sharper. Laughter hangs in the air like broken glass, champagne bubbles fading on the surface of untouched crystal flutes, and every camera flash feels like a small explosion against the polished walls of the old New York theater. You can almost smell the money in the room, designer perfume, polished wood, catered dishes no one is really eating. And yet, beneath all that shine, there's a tension that no one wants to acknowledge. Ethan Wallace stands near the center, perfectly still, like a man who believes the world rotates around him. His suit fits like it was carved onto his body, his expression unreadable, but confident. The kind of confidence that doesn't invite questions. People don't talk to him. They circle him. They admire him. Or they fear him. Sometimes both. And tonight, in this room of donors and influencers and power that pretends to be kindness, he looks completely untouchable until the boy appears. Daniel Brooks, 12 years old, walks toward the front of the room, and the sound changes. Conversations soften. Chairs stop moving. Even the music fades into the background. He moves with a careful dignity. His body small, his shoulders lifted not from strength, but from courage. No hands, no arms, just determination in the way his steps refuse to tremble. He doesn't look like someone asking for pity. He looks like someone who already knows who he is. And that's what unsettles Ethan. A whisper moves through the tables, the way fear does in a secret. Someone breathes out quietly. A woman lowers her phone. Daniel keeps walking. His eyes don't search for approval. They don't search for anyone. They land on the piano, black, brilliant, towering like a mountain the room already decided he could never climb. Ethan smirks. He leans slightly forward, enough for people nearby to hear, enough for the words to spill like a slow-moving blade. Play the piano? Kid, you can't even reach it. The laughter doesn't explode. It drips. A few forced chuckles. A couple of nervous smiles. The kind of reaction people have when cruelty feels safe, because power is the one speaking. For half a second, the world pauses, and Daniel turns his head. He doesn't look angry. He doesn't look wounded. His expression is steady, something deeper than pride, quieter than defiance. He holds Ethan's gaze like someone who knows that dignity is not a thing another person can take away. Respect doesn't need hands. His voice is calm, almost soft, but it lands harder than any insult in the room. You feel it, the sting beneath the elegance, the fragile crack inside the facade. Guests shift in their seats. Someone looks at Ethan instead of the boy. Someone else stops breathing for just a moment, and you already sense it. Something dangerous just changed direction. No one claps. No one speaks. The silence stretches, not empty, loaded. And in that silence, one question rises. Not spoken, not acknowledged, but impossible to escape. Who truly holds power in this room? The man built by wealth, or the child built by courage? I don't realize the room has gone silent until I notice my own heartbeat, loud, uneven, almost echoing inside my chest. The lights dim just slightly, not enough to be dramatic, but enough to make every shadow feel closer. The stage is right there in front of us, polished like a mirror, and Daniel stands at the center of it. Alone. No music playing. No host speaking. No noise from the orchestra pit. Just him. Small, steady, and terrifyingly calm, like a kid who already understands something the rest of us are still trying to grasp. No one is talking anymore. Forks rest untouched. Champagne glasses hover midair. Even the photographers lower their cameras, as if pressing a button right now would be a kind of disrespect. And I can feel it, that strange tension that wraps around everyone's throat at the same time. It doesn't feel like anticipation. It feels like fear of what we might discover about ourselves if we keep watching. Daniel doesn't rush. He doesn't ask for help. He doesn't hesitate. He moves toward the piano, that massive black Steinway that usually intimidates seasoned performers. And he does it with a grace that doesn't make sense for someone his age. No flinching, no shaking, just intention, like the stage belongs to him, even if the world insists it shouldn't. From our table, Ethan watches with that same confident posture. He always carries jaw tight, chin slightly raised, but there's a tiny shift in his eyes, something between annoyance and something he doesn't want to name. He still thinks he controls the room. He still believes his words hold power here. But something bigger has already begun. Daniel adjusts himself beside the bench instead of sitting. He leans forward, positioning his body with precision, and the realization hits the audience almost all at once. He isn't here despite his disability. He is here with it, and he refuses to hide it. Someone near me whispers, barely audible, He's really going to try? Another voice, softer, trembling. No, he's going to show us something we don't understand. And they're right, because what's about to happen isn't about music. It's about dignity. Daniel lifts his foot toward the keys. The movement is quiet, almost fragile, but the courage inside it feels louder than anything this room has ever heard. Every muscle in his body works with absolute focus. No anger, no humiliation, just purpose, pure, unbroken purpose. Like he has carried this moment his entire life and refuses to let anyone rewrite it for him. Nobody breathes. Nobody blinks. We're all suspended in that fraction of a second before the first note, suspended in the space between arrogance and truth, between what we thought we knew and what we are about to feel. And right then, as his toes hover gently above the first key, a single, haunting question forms inside every one of us. A question no one dares to speak, but everyone feels burning through the silence. What if the thing we were so sure was weakness was never weakness at all? The first note doesn't sound like a note at all. It sounds like a breath someone has been holding for years, finally released into the open. I'm close enough to see the reflection of the stage lights sliding across the polished black surface of the piano, warm and golden, like the last light before sunset in a small American town. Daniel's foot presses against the key, careful, deliberate, and the sound that rises is fragile but stubborn, like it refuses to disappear. He doesn't rush. He doesn't try to prove anything. Every movement is honest, raw, almost painful to watch, because you can feel how much it costs him to be up there and how much more it would cost him to walk away. Each note lands like a confession. Slow, imperfect, alive. The room feels heavier with every second. People who came here to network, to smile for photos, to talk about investments and charity reports, now sit frozen, staring at a boy who should have been overlooked, ignored, written off by the world, but instead stands at the center of it. And somehow, we're the ones who feel small. From my seat, I can see Ethan trying not to react. His jaw tight, hands clasped, posture still sharp. But his eyes betray something else. That first tiny crack, that moment when pride meets truth and doesn't know where to run. Inside his silence, there's a question burning. And I can almost hear it even though he never speaks it aloud. Why does this hurt to watch? Because this isn't talent. This isn't spectacle. This is struggle turned into sound, years of being underestimated, doubted, stared at, poured into a melody that doesn't ask for permission to exist. The rhythm deepens. The notes get braver. Daniel's body sways gently as he plays, like he and the piano are learning how to trust each other in real time. His face doesn't show pain. It shows resolve. The kind you feel in stories about everyday Americans who refuse to break, even when life keeps pushing. No applause, no whispers, just hearts beating louder. A woman a few seats ahead of me wipes her eyes and whispers under her breath, barely audible. He's not playing music, he's telling his life. And she's right. You can hear loneliness in the lower keys, hope in the higher ones, fear hiding between the pauses, a childhood that never fit into the boxes people tried to put it in, a strength no one expected, but now no one can deny. Somewhere in the middle of all this, the balance in the room shifts. The boy who was supposed to be pitted becomes the one everyone is learning from. The billionaire who mocked him becomes the one exposed. And the silence between the notes feels louder than any orchestra. Every second stretches, like the story is still unfolding, like there's something deeper we haven't reached yet, and we're terrified and desperate to know what comes next. Because if this moment can exist, what else in our lives, in ourselves, have we misunderstood all along? I don't notice when the music stops being just music. I notice when the room begins to look at him instead of the boy. It happens slowly at first, like a quiet shift in gravity. Daniel is still playing, every note steady and fearless, but the weight of the moment pivots, and suddenly the spotlight doesn't feel like it's on the stage anymore. It feels like it's on Ethan. The hall grows so still it almost feels alive, like the walls themselves are listening, not to the piano, but to the truth unfolding in real time. You can feel the air tightening, the way it does before a storm rolls across a small Midwestern town. Glasses remain untouched. Chairs don't move. Conversations don't dare exist. People turn their heads, not because they've stopped caring about the boy, but because they finally understand what they're witnessing. The most powerful man in the room is shrinking. Ethan sits there in his designer suit, every inch of him built to project control, boardroom posture, steady shoulders, that confident American, nothing shakes me expression he's worn his entire life. But now, up close you see something else, the stiffness in his jaw, the tight swallow, the way his eyes can't decide whether to face the stage or escape it. He's not being admired anymore. He's being measured. And for the first time, he knows he's losing. Daniel's melody keeps moving, brave and unpretending, courage and sound. And every note holds up a mirror Ethan can't look away from. Pride has nowhere to hide. Legacy has no shield. The kind of success that fills magazines and gala speeches suddenly feels small, painfully small, compared to a child who refuses to bow to the limits the world tried to place on him. The whispers begin. Not gossip, not noise, just truth breaking the silence. Someone at a nearby table leans forward, voice barely above a breath. Because tonight, he's the strongest one here. Ethan hears it. You can see it land. His fingers curl against the edge of the table, as if he needs to hold on to something, anything. He tries to sit taller, like posture can protect him, like power can still matter here. But the room has turned him inside out, and now every eye feels like a verdict. He lowers his gaze for the first time, and that's when it hits, not anger, not embarrassment, but something deeper, older, heavier. The kind of shame that doesn't make noise. The kind that comes from realizing you spent a lifetime winning the wrong battles. He whispers to himself, voice cracking in a way only he hears. Why are they looking at me like this? No one answers him out loud. They don't have to, because the answer is everywhere. In the silence, in the music, in the way dignity stands taller than money tonight. Daniel keeps playing, and Ethan, the man who built empires and never bowed to anyone, finally understands what it feels like to be the smallest person in the room, while a boy the world once underestimated becomes the one who teaches everyone what strength really looks like. And as the next note echoes through the hall, one question hangs heavy in the air, not spoken, but impossible to escape. If power can't protect a man from his own truth, what will? It hits him in the middle of the music. Like someone ripped open a door he spent his whole life pretending didn't exist. 1 second Ethan is sitting there in that grand New York hall trying to hold himself together while Daniel plays. And the next, he's somewhere else entirely. Somewhere colder. Somewhere he never wanted to return to. The sound of the piano fades, and in its place, there's the echo of footsteps on hardwood floors. A long hallway, walls painted the color of winter mornings. A house big enough to impress anyone on the outside. But inside, it feels empty in a way only a child can truly understand. Not the kind of empty where nothing exists, the kind where love does. Young Ethan stands there. Maybe 8, maybe 9, hair combed perfectly, shirt tucked in, back straight, because straight was the only acceptable way to stand in that house. His face is tense, trying not to look afraid, trying not to look anything. Across from him sits his father, a man built like stone and expectation. No smile, no softness, no warmth, just rules. The staff passes by quietly, eyes lowered, acting like ghosts, present, but never truly there. No one speaks unless spoken to. No one interrupts. Emotion has no seat at that table. On the piano nearby, the same instrument Ethan now despises without knowing why, a single wrong note hangs in the air. A mistake. Small. Human. Unforgivable. His father's voice cuts through the silence like a blade sharpened over years. Power is respect. Every word is slow, heavy, final. Compassion makes you small. The boy swallows hard. He wants to cry, but tears were never allowed here. Tears were weakness. Weakness was humiliation. Humiliation was a crime. His hands tremble. So he hides them behind his back. He isn't afraid of punishment. He's afraid of being seen. Afraid that if his father notices anything fragile in him, anything soft, it will be erased. Erased the way laughter was erased. The way childhood was erased. The way kindness never stood a chance. So he lifts his chin. He makes a promise he doesn't fully understand, but one that will shape every cruel decision he'll ever make. Then I will never be small. And the house approves. Silence returns. Discipline wins. The boy disappears. And the man is born. Back in the present, Ethan feels his chest tighten. Daniel's music is still playing. Honest, vulnerable, fearless. Everything his father taught him to reject. And for the first time, Ethan realizes something that terrifies him more than losing control in front of this crowd. His cruelty toward the boy wasn't about superiority. It was about fear. Fear of seeing himself in a child who refuses to hide his scars. Fear that strength might not be what he was taught. Fear that everything he built was nothing more than armor. The music swells. The shame burns. And buried inside that memory, inside that cold house, inside that promise spoken decades ago, one question rises like a voice Ethan can no longer silence. If compassion makes a man small, why does denying it feel so much worse now? It hits him all at once, not like a punch, not like anger, but like a weight pressing straight into his chest, heavy and relentless. We're back in that dazzling New York gala, the kind of place where everything is designed to impress, but suddenly none of it matters. The champagne sits untouched, the ice melting slowly in crystal buckets. The murmurs returning aren't social. They're emotional, uncertain, human. And right there, in the middle of it all, Ethan Wallace looks like a man trying to hold a collapsing world together from the inside out. Daniel keeps playing. Those notes, fragile and brave at the same time, float through the hall like confessions carried on air. Every chord feels personal. Every pause feels intentional. And Ethan, the man who once believed he owned every room he stepped into, can't seem to control even his own breathing. His hand rests on the edge of the table, just for support. You can see the tremor. He straightens his shoulders like he always does, that Wall Street instinct, that boardroom armor. But it doesn't work here. Not tonight. The room isn't reacting to his presence anymore. The power he wore like a suit of armor suddenly feels like fabric hanging off a man who doesn't know who he is without it. He stares at the stage, but it feels like the stage is staring back. His mind is loud, louder than the music, a storm of shame, pride, confusion, anger at himself, at his past, at the world for suddenly feeling different than it did a minute ago. He wants to look away so desperately, like a guilty thought you don't want to face. But he can't. Why can't I look away? He whispers under his breath, barely audible, the words tasting unfamiliar, like vulnerability he forgot how to speak. A woman nearby, Daniel's mother, keeps her eyes on her son, her voice soft, but steady, like someone who has carried pain without letting it break her. Because truth demands witnesses. And the words don't attack him. They expose him. Ethan swallows hard. The wealth, the reputation, the newspapers that praised him, the deals that built his empire. All of it feels small now. Not worthless, just empty. Like success without compassion was never success at all. Just a shield worn by a terrified child who grew into a powerful man. The music swells again, and Ethan feels something inside him pulling apart, pride on one side, conscience on the other, like two forces that have always existed inside him, but finally chose the same battlefield. He feels vulnerable, not because the room is judging him, but because for the first time in years, he is judging himself. He tries to steady his breathing. He can't. He tries to hide the tremble in his hands. He can't. And in that moment, somewhere between the next note and the next heartbeat, one haunting thought tears through him like a voice he spent decades trying to silence. If everything he built was meant to prove he was strong, why does this moment, this fragile, uncomfortable, deeply human moment, feel like the first time he's ever truly faced strength at all? The moment I notice his feet against the stage floor, something inside me tightens, like the world just narrowed down to that small space beneath him. No shoes, no armor, just skin against polished wood. The lights above warming the surface like afternoon sun on a front porch somewhere in small-town America. And yet, instead of looking fragile, Daniel looks unshakable. He doesn't tremble, not once. His movements are precise, almost graceful, like every inch of his body knows exactly why it's here and refuses to apologize for it. The melody keeps rising, raw and unfiltered, the kind of sound you feel in your chest before you even hear it in your ears. It doesn't sound like performance. It sounds like survival. The audience shifts, not out of discomfort, but because emotion is catching up to them. People who walked in wearing confidence and polished smiles now sit with glassy eyes and tight throats. You can see it in the way their shoulders soften, the way their hands slowly fall away from their phones. They're not watching a spectacle anymore. They're witnessing courage. From backstage, an older pianist leans forward just a little, his expression thoughtful, like he's seeing a truth he somehow missed after decades of playing concert halls and grand stages. Because Daniel isn't following technique or elegance or perfection, he's following something deeper, something no teacher could have taught him. And every note proves it. His expression remains steady, not angry, not pleading, not desperate for approval, just grounded, present, certain, like he understands that his worth was never up for debate. Not here, not anywhere, no matter who chose not to see it before tonight. The melody swells, stronger, braver, and you feel the room tilt with it. Tears begin to appear quietly, the way grief and hope often do in the American heart. Silently, respectfully, like a prayer whispered under breath. Then, in the middle of a soft transition between notes, Daniel breathes out a sentence, barely audible, not meant to impress anyone, spoken like someone telling the truth for the very first time. I don't play to impress. I play to exist. And the words land like a punch wrapped in honesty. Exist, not to amaze, not to prove, not to earn space in a world that already tried to deny him one, just to exist. The melody rises again, stronger, fuller, almost defiant now, like a wind pushing through an open highway at night, steady and unstoppable. And suddenly, the idea of perfection feels irrelevant, small, shallow, powerless compared to the force of a child who refuses to disappear simply because life made things harder for him. The audience doesn't clap. They feel. You can sense it, the shift, the recognition, the painful understanding that for years many of them might have looked at kids like Daniel and only seen limitation, when what had always stood in front of them was strength, real strength, the kind built quietly, the kind earned through every moment life said, "You can't," and someone answered, "Watch me." And as the next note hangs in the air, fragile yet unbreakable, one question lingers deep inside every heart in the room, and inside mine as well. If this is what resilience looks like, what excuse do the rest of us have for ever calling ourselves broken? It happens in the last stretch of the song, the moment when the melody stops sounding like music and starts sounding like something holy. The lights above the stage shift warmer, softer, the way evening sunlight spills through the blinds of a quiet American living room at the end of a long day. The whole room feels heavier now, like everyone's carrying the same breath in their chest, afraid to release it too soon. Daniel moves into the final sequence. You can feel it before you hear it, that rising wave of emotion winding through every note, every pause, every fragile second he refuses to rush. His foot presses firmly against the keys, not with force, but with certainty. And the sound that fills the hall doesn't ask to be admired. It demands to be felt. Each chord lands deeper than the last. And somewhere in the middle of that last climb, you realize nobody is judging anymore. Nobody is comparing. Nobody is thinking about status or name tags or wealth or who belongs where. All of that disappeared. What's left is something painfully human. Ethan sits frozen, not as a billionaire, not as a man who once believed power meant never bowing to anyone, but as someone who suddenly remembers what it feels like to have a heart. His eyes glisten, not because he wants to cry, but because he no longer knows how not to. Daniel reaches the final passage. The melody turns fierce, not loud, not dramatic. Fierce in the way truth is fierce when it no longer agrees to hide. Every note sounds like a scar being transformed into light. Every pause feels like the weight of survival settling into the room. And then the last note falls, soft, unbreakable, alive. The echo lingers in the air, stretching across the room like a held breath. No one moves. No one claps. No one dares. The silence doesn't feel empty. It feels sacred, like standing at the edge of something you don't fully understand, but know you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. People stare ahead through tears they didn't realize were there. Pride disappears. Ego melts. Titles mean nothing. Someone near me whispers, voice trembling through emotion they can't contain. Don't clap, just feel it. And it spreads, not as a rule, not as instruction, but as a shared understanding. This isn't the kind of moment applause belongs to. Applause would make it smaller. Louder, yes, but smaller. Daniel doesn't smile. He doesn't bow. He doesn't wait for approval. He simply sits there, steady, breathing, existing, as if everything he needed to say is already living inside that last note. And in that silence, deeper than sound, deeper than pride, deeper than anything we expected to experience inside a shiny American gala hall, one undeniable truth settles over everyone in the room. Tonight, dignity spoke louder than power, and none of us will ever be able to pretend we didn't hear it. It happens so quietly you almost miss it. Not a dramatic collapse, not a sudden breakdown, but a slow unbuilding of a man who once believed nothing in this world could touch him. Ethan sits there at his table, shoulders slumped for the first time in his life, his eyes lowered like someone who just realized the ground beneath him was never as solid as he thought. The room is still. People don't whisper. They don't move. They just watch, not out of judgment, but out of the silent weight of understanding. He isn't towering anymore. He isn't the untouchable billionaire with the confident handshake and the polished reputation. The man whose name appears in financial magazines and charity boards, the kind of American success story people point to and say, that's what winning looks like. Right now, he looks human, almost painfully so. Daniel's last note still lingers in the air, like smoke after a backyard bonfire. Faint, but impossible to ignore. And inside that fading echo, Ethan hears something louder than applause, louder than prestige, louder than the life he built from steel, numbers, and control. He hears his own emptiness, his empire, the skyscrapers, the investments, the private jet flights across coasts. All the things that once made him feel untouchable suddenly feel weightless, like a city built without walls, open to a truth he can no longer hide from. And it terrifies him. His breathing turns uneven. His hands rest on the table not with authority, but with exhaustion, like a man who just walked through decades of his own life and realized how much of it was fueled by fear instead of purpose. He tries to lift his gaze, but he can't, because if he looks up now, he'll have to admit what's happening inside him. And for a man who was raised to never crack, cracking feels like drowning. He swallows hard. His voice escapes before he can stop it. Small, broken, not meant for anyone but himself. All this money, and I've never been as strong as him. The words don't echo out loud. They echo inside him. And in that moment, every success story he's ever told about his life, every narrative of power, dominance, achievement begins to crumble piece by piece, like old brick falling away from a wall that no longer knows how to stand. He realizes something no one ever taught him in his world of business dinners, silent boardrooms, and contracts signed in glass towers. Strength isn't how loud you stand. It's how bravely you stand alone, without armor, without image, without walls. He finally lifts his eyes, and when he does, he doesn't see a child with limitations. He sees the kind of courage he has spent a lifetime running from. And as that realization pierces through the last pieces of pride he was still holding on to, one thought rises inside him. Not dramatic, not loud, but devastating in its truth. If everything he built was meant to make him great, why does it feel like greatness has been sitting in front of him this entire time, in the form of a boy who owns nothing but his courage, and somehow has more than Ethan ever did? The lights stay low, like the room itself is afraid to break what just happened. No applause, no movement, just that fragile, breath-thin silence hovering over everyone, the kind that makes you feel like even shifting in your chair would be disrespectful. Daniel sits there at the piano for a moment longer, his chest rising and falling slowly, like someone who has given everything he had and isn't asking for anything back. Then he lifts his head, not dramatically, not as a performer searching for validation. He simply raises his gaze the way a person does when they're steady in who they are, grounded, dignified, completely present. He doesn't smile. He doesn't bow. He doesn't look for approval from a room full of people used to giving it. He just exists. And somehow, that stillness feels louder than any ovation could. You can see tears across the crowd. Not loud, public tears, but the kind people try to hide by blinking too much or pressing their lips together. Couples hold hands under the table. A businessman wipes his glasses. A woman presses her palm to her chest like she's trying to steady something inside it. Ethan doesn't move. He wants to stand. He wants to speak. He wants to say something, anything, that might undo the moment where his pride turned into shame in front of everyone, but the words won't come. For a man who built an empire on confidence and control, silence suddenly feels heavier than failure. His mind won't stop racing. All the things that once defined him, the deals, the power, the rooms he commanded, feel like they're slipping through his fingers, and he doesn't know whether to chase them or let them fall. Inside that chaos, one thought rises, quiet, desperate, impossible to silence. Who am I when I'm not hiding behind power? He doesn't say it out loud, but you can see it in his eyes. You can see the battle, the fear of being small, the longing to be human, the part of him that still believes strength means never bending, fighting against the part of him that finally understands strength might be something else entirely. Daniel doesn't look at him with anger. He doesn't look at him with pity. He looks at him like someone who has already made peace with his own place in the world and is waiting to see if Ethan has the courage to do the same. The audience feels it too, that invisible tension, that question hanging in the air like a thread no one wants to cut. Nobody knows what happens next. Nobody knows whether Ethan will retreat back into the armor he spent his life building or step into the terrifying possibility of becoming someone different. The room remains still. The silence refuses to leave. And in that suspended moment, it doesn't feel like the story has ended. It feels like something inside Ethan has only just begun. A question that won't let go, one that will follow him out of this hall, down every street he walks, into every decision he makes from now on. If he finally steps out from behind the life he hid inside, will there be anything real left? Or will he have to learn, for the first time, how to build himself from the ground up? The room doesn't explode into applause. No cheers, no murmuring, no shifting chairs or clinking glasses. Instead, what fills the space is something far more powerful. A shared breath, quiet and fragile, like the entire hall is holding its heart in the same place at the same time. You can hear soft sniffles, the faint rustle of someone wiping tears, the kind of silence that only happens when people realize they just witnessed something that changed them. Daniel remains at the piano, still, grounded, present. He doesn't rise. He doesn't look for acknowledgement. He simply breathes. And somehow even that feels meaningful. His face is calm, not triumphant, not hungry for validation, just peaceful, like someone who knows he doesn't need the world's permission to exist with dignity. Across the room, Ethan sits motionless, not as the billionaire, not as the man who once believed power was measured in applause, influence, and control, but as a human being stripped of everything except truth. He looks at Daniel the way someone looks at a sunrise after a sleepless night, tired, humbled, aware that something inside him has shifted in a way he can't undo. He blinks slowly, as if fighting back tears he doesn't fully understand, the same way many of us in this room are trying to steady our emotions right now. The audience doesn't share expressions or words, yet everyone feels connected. Strangers who suddenly share the same moment, the same realization. Greatness didn't stand at the head table tonight. It sat barefoot at a piano. A woman near the aisle lowers her head and whispers softly, not to anyone in particular, more like a prayer spoken into the air, so it won't disappear. On that night, a child's courage stood taller than an empire. The words linger, not dramatic, not loud, but weighted with truth. And you feel it spreading through the crowd, like light breaking through clouds after a storm. People who walked in thinking strength meant confidence, status, or power now sit still, realizing maybe they've misunderstood what strength looks like their entire lives. Because tonight, strength looked like resilience. Strength sounded like honesty in every trembling note. Strength existed in a child who refused to be defined by absence. Ethan lowers his eyes again, not out of shame this time, but out of respect. Something inside him has shifted from resistance to acceptance, though he's not ready to face the full meaning yet. That message, that realization, doesn't roar inside him. It settles, quietly, unforgettably. Daniel finally exhales. Slow, genuine. And the breath echoes across the hall not as sound, but as presence. It feels like everyone is breathing with him, like every heartbeat in the room is syncing for a brief, sacred moment. No one leaves. No one speaks. No one wants to break what this moment has become. And as we sit there, suspended between who we were before the performance and who we might become after it, one truth rises gently inside every single person watching. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one that moves the world the farthest. The night air feels different the moment the doors open. Cooler, softer, like New York itself decided to quiet down out of respect for what just happened inside that theater. People walk out slowly, not talking, not rushing for cars or phone screens, just carrying something invisible with them. You can hear the muffled city noise in the distance, traffic, horns, the faint hum of streetlights, but even the city feels small compared to the silence everyone is holding. Ethan steps into that silence like a man walking onto unfamiliar ground. He doesn't stand near the exit to shake hands. He doesn't stay back to give a speech or reclaim the authority he once wore like a badge. For the first time in his life, he doesn't try to control the narrative. He simply walks past the marble pillars, down the stone steps, into the soft glow of streetlights painting the sidewalk in gold. His shoulders are lower, not defeated, just honest. Every step feels heavy, like he's carrying something no one else can see. Not shame anymore, not pride, but truth. And truth doesn't scream. It sits deep in the chest and refuses to leave. Across the street, the city keeps moving. Yellow cabs sliding through intersections, a couple laughing quietly as they pass by, steam rising from a subway, great the way it always does late at night. Ordinary life goes on. But inside Ethan, nothing feels ordinary anymore. He reaches his car and pauses with his hand on the door handle, eyes reflecting the glow of the streetlights like water about to spill over. He doesn't open it. Not yet. His breath shakes, just a little. He hears the last note again, the way it lingered. And Daniel's face returns to his mind, not as a performer, not as a symbol, but as a boy who stood in front of the world with nothing but courage and refused to bow. A sentence forms inside him. Quiet, raw, undeniable. I built an empire. But tonight, a child built something greater inside me. He doesn't say it out loud. He doesn't need to, because for the first time in his life, the conversation isn't with the world. It's with himself. Back inside the building, Daniel stands backstage with his mother. No applause is chasing them. No reporters swarm. No spotlight remains. There is just a tired kid leaning into the warmth of someone who has been his anchor long before tonight, and a mother whose eyes shine with pride born not from performance, but from survival. They don't know what Ethan is feeling out on that sidewalk. They don't know what they changed, but they don't have to. Some stories don't announce their impact. They live quietly inside the people who aren't ready to admit they needed them. Ethan finally opens the car door, then stops again, staring at his reflection in the window. The man staring back at him looks the same. Same suit, same face, same life waiting for him tomorrow. But he knows better, because somewhere between the first note and the last, something inside him cracked open. And now he has to decide what to do with the part of himself he spent a lifetime hiding. The city lights blur. The night breathes. And as he steps inside the car, that silence doesn't fade. It follows him all the way into the dark and beyond. Before you leave this story, take a second to breathe with it. because what we witnessed tonight wasn't just about Daniel and his courage, or Ethan and the moment his walls finally cracked. It was about all of us, about the battles we hide, the fears we bury, and the strength we sometimes forget we still carry inside. Now I want to ask you, from your heart, not just your mind, which moment in Daniel's story spoke to you the loudest? Did you see a part of yourself in Ethan, in his pride, his confusion, or his awakening? If this story touched something inside you, what truth in your own life are you finally ready to face? Share your thoughts in the comments below, not just as feedback, but as a moment of honesty with yourself. Your voice matters here, and someone reading your words may find the courage they've been needing too. And if this story moved you the way it moved us tonight, join this community of hearts that feel deeply. Tap subscribe, activate the notification bell, and stay with us for more stories that challenge, heal, and transform. Because we don't just tell stories here. We awaken the parts of ourselves we thought were lost. And if you know someone who needs this message, a friend, a family member, someone silently fighting their own battle, share this video with them. Let Daniel's strength and Ethan's moment of truth travel farther than this screen. Tonight, one child's courage moved an entire room. What part of your world are you ready to move next?